So I was driving in the car the other day, as I often am, and I was talking to one of my friends, and we started to talk about the resurrection story. And as we talked about it, there was a part in it that really struck a chord with me that I felt really needs to be looked at. And we talked about the betrayal. And it is not an unfamiliar story. It's one that we talk about quite often, actually, because if it was not for the betrayal, then the whole resurrection would not have been set into motion. And so as I read the story and I went over the account, there was something in it that was very, very striking to me. And the thing that was striking to me was this question: who cries for Judas? Judas, as we all know, or is assumed that we all know, is the one who betrayed Jesus. He is the one that handed him over to the scribes and the priests. He is the one that set into motion, as I already said, his crucifixion, not resurrection. He is the one who caused Jesus to be arrested. He is the one who caused Jesus to go before Pilate. He is the one that caused Jesus to be hung on the tree. Everything is because of Judas. And even to this day, over 2,000 years later, Judas is still bearing the guilt and condemnation of the decision that he made all that time ago. But as I thought about this and I read the story, there was something in the story that is not often told, but I think needs to be looked at. In the story, they're all together, and Jesus tells them that there is one among him that is going to betray him. And of course, they all ask, who is it? Is it me? And he responds to them and says that it's the one who dips his hand in the bowl with me, and goes on to tell them that a curse to them. And he doesn't curse him, but he tells them that a curse is going to befall him. And the curse is going to be so heavy that it would be better for him to be dead than to be alive. And so Judas specifically speaks up and he says, is it me? And Jesus told him, you said so. So then he goes on and he does the Lord's Supper as we know it. And he breaks the bread and he has the wine and he has them drink it, because that is supposed to symbolize the forgiveness of our sins, the shedding of the blood. The story goes on, and it goes on with Jesus telling the rest of the disciples that all of you are going to desert me. Peter says, no, it's not going to happen. Jesus tells him it will happen. It'll happen 3 times. But Peter is like, no way, I'm going to leave you. Well, Jesus goes off to Gethsemane to pray. The 3rd time after he's done praying, he says, my betrayers are upon me. Judas had already told the priests and the scribes, it's the one that I kiss. When I kiss him, arrest him. So he does the kiss. And Jesus tells him, do what you got to do. They arrest Jesus. There's a bit of a tussle between one of the disciples and one of the slaves, but Jesus then talks to them. Well, after Jesus is taken, and after he is spit on, and after he is beaten, and he's taken to Pilate, Judas is sitting and watching all of this, and he becomes overwhelmed with grief. Now, it does not tell us that he becomes overwhelmed with grief, but it does tell us that he repented. See, what happened was Judas really loved Jesus. And you could tell that Judas really loved Jesus just based on the way he responded to how Jesus was being treated. And so when he saw Jesus get spat on and he saw Jesus get hit and he heard him being mocked, it was all too much for him. And he fell into despair. And so he went back to the place where he had started this whole thing, and he tried to undo what he had done, but they told him that it was too late. See, oftentimes in life, we make decisions and we choose to do things for whatever reason. For this case, it was for financial gain. We don't know why Judas wanted the money. We don't know why he needed the money, but for whatever reason, he felt as though that price was good enough for him to betray his friend. But when he saw what that betrayal really meant, there was a part of him that was like, this cannot be. I cannot just sit back and watch this happen to my friend. I cannot just sit back and watch him go through all of this. I will not have this. I can't do it. So he tried to undo it. And unfortunately, it was already too late, because what he had done was already set in motion. And so that whole cycle of him betraying Jesus, getting the money, going through with it, Jesus going through all of these heinous acts, Judas having to watch it, Judas not wanting to do it anymore, Judas repenting, trying to make it stop, was all too much, and he ultimately killed himself. Why do we still condemn Judas? But we have given Peter such an elevated name and an elevated space. Why do we talk so badly about Judas, but we celebrate and praise the other disciples? Yes, it was Judas that betrayed Jesus, but the disciples also left him. As a matter of fact, they all left right after he got arrested. There was only two that was still around. One was Judas and the other was Peter. But even Peter wasn't there when Jesus was going through all of that. Peter was off in the distance. You know, in modern times, I said he was Facebook stalking him. He was social media lurking. He was looking on Instagram and Snapchat to see what was going on, but he wasn't interacting, but he still wanted to keep in touch. So much so that when people started to recognize who he was, I don't know him, and so he denied him. Yet, we go and we tell the story about how Peter was redeemed and he was elevated to this new position once Jesus is resurrected and he comes back. And we do the same thing with the other disciples. We talk about John and how Jesus gave Mary over to John when he was on the cross. Woman, behold thy son, behold thy mother, and he left them in each other's care. And we talk all of these glorious things about what happened after the fact, but Judas never received that redemption because no one ever took the time to consider the mental anguish, the emotional despair, the emotional distress that he went through, because at the end of the day, no matter what he did that set that in motion, he felt terrible and he tried to make it right, but it was too late. How many people have we allowed to die in their mess because we feel like they have gotten what they deserved? How many people do we sit back and we watch? We watch become consumed with guilt, and we watch continuously condemn themselves, and we watch them live in this pit, live in this hell because of decisions that they have made, and we tell them, this is what you get, this is what you deserve, you have earned what you have, instead of offering the very gift that Jesus offered Judas long before he had even handed him over, and that was the gift of forgiveness. Because remember, after he told them that there was going to be one that was to betray him, he then shared the bread and the wine, which was to signify the forgiveness of sins. If all the other 11 could be pardoned and forgiven, why couldn't Judas? How many Judases do we sit next to every single day, looking for someone to tell them, I forgive you. I love you. You are not the decision that you made. You are not your choices. You are more than that. You are better than that. You can move past that. That is not the end of you. That is not all you have to offer. Or better yet, it's time to forgive yourself. And stop running that tape of what you did. Stop rewinding those memories of how you behaved and how you acted. Because guess what? There was a man who shed blood so that you could be redeemed, so that you would not be identified by those things that you hold on to. You do not have to be a prisoner to the decisions and the choices. You do not have to be a prisoner to the behaviors or the words. Because there is redemption and there is liberty. And there is freedom. And you might not be able to undo what you did, but you can move forward. So who cries for Judas? Who cries for those who are trapped? Who cries for those who are trapped in their emotional distress? Who cries for those who are just overwhelmed mentally? Who cries for those who are just consumed with guilt and shame and fear and anxiety and rejection and condemnation? Because the truth be told, we all have said things that we wish we could take back. And we all have done things to others that we wish we could undo. I think there's a valuable lesson that we can learn from Judas. When you mess up, sometimes, nope, not sometimes, when you mess up, you do not have to stay in that place, because you can repent. You can ask for forgiveness. And even if the other person or the other people choose not to forgive you, you have the choice as to whether or not you will forgive yourself. Now, that does not mean that you will not bear the weight of that choice that you made, because you will. You will have to bear the weight, but it is not one that you will carry for the rest of your life. So to all of those out there who may be having a Judas experience, who may be held down and bound by something that has happened in your past or your recent past, or even is currently happening now, today I offer you one word, and that word is forgiveness. You can be free, and death is not the answer.